It was a crisp, quiet morning when Jason found himself standing in front of a strange, black dog at a local farmer's market. The sun was barely above the horizon, casting a gentle glow over the marketplace, but Jason's attention was caught by the creature before him. The dog was different. His fur was jet black, sleek and shiny, contrasting starkly with the natural surroundings. His eyes, piercing, golden, and intense, seemed to be looking straight into Jason's soul. It felt almost as if the dog could see his very thoughts, and a shiver ran down Jason's spine. The dog's size was impressive, his muscular frame a testament to his strength. Despite his imposing appearance, the dog was silent, his body still. It wasn't just the dog's eyes that captivated Jason, it was the strange, ethereal aura surrounding him. A sense of familiarity tugged at Jason's heart, like he had met this dog before, even though he was sure he hadn't. The name Anubis popped into his mind, as if the dog had whispered it into his ear. It didn't make sense, but Jason felt a deep, inexplicable pull toward this creature. The man selling the dog was a disheveled, rough-looking individual who barely acknowledged Jason's presence. "He's a bit rough around the edges," the seller muttered, as though it was an afterthought. Jason didn't need any more explanation. He had already made up his mind. This was no ordinary dog. The strange sensation he felt couldn't be ignored. "Does he have a name?" Jason asked, almost as if he already knew the answer. "Yeah, Anubis," the seller replied nonchalantly. Jason froze. The name resonated deep within him, echoing through his thoughts. It was the name of an ancient god, the Egyptian god of death, who guided souls to the afterlife. Why would the dog be named after him? The seller didn't seem to notice Jason's hesitation, or perhaps he simply didn't care. "He's had a rough time, but he's loyal. Just don't push him too hard. He'll protect you, but he's got a temper." Jason couldn't help but smile. He had never felt more certain about anything in his life. He couldn't walk away from this dog, not now, not after feeling such a deep connection. His decision was made. The transaction was quick, and the money exchanged hands. The man didn't even offer a collar or leash. Without a second thought, Jason led Anubis to his car. There was an unsettling quiet in the air, broken only by the sound of the wind rustling through the trees. Jason glanced at the dog, who seemed to be perfectly calm despite everything, almost too calm. As Jason drove home, the silence in the car was deafening. Anubis didn't bark or whimper. He simply sat beside Jason, his golden eyes never leaving the road ahead. Jason couldn't help but wonder where the dog had come from. How had he ended up in this farmer's market? The questions piled up in his mind, but he couldn't shake the feeling that it didn't matter. Whatever Anubis was, wherever he had come from, Jason had to keep him. There was no other option. When they arrived home, Jason's wife, Monica, was waiting outside, visibly surprised. "What is this?" she asked, her tone sharp as she looked down at the enormous dog. The kids were running around the yard, oblivious to the new addition to their family. Monica raised an eyebrow as she eyed Jason. "Another dog? You didn't tell me about this." Jason shrugged, trying to play it off casually. "I couldn't leave him behind. He's special." Monica frowned. She didn't share Jason's enthusiasm. "Special? Jason, look at him. He's huge, and he doesn't even seem like a normal dog. What's going on?" But Jason was insistent. "Trust me. He's been through a lot. He's not like the others." He knelt down to Anubis's level and gently stroked his fur. Anubis looked up at him with an almost human-like understanding. It was as if the dog knew what Jason was trying to say. Monica wasn't convinced, but she knew when to let things go. "Fine," she said reluctantly. "But if anything happens..." Jason nodded. Nothing will happen. He's good. He'll protect us. The first few days went by smoothly. Anubis quickly adapted to the house, despite his intimidating appearance. He was calm around the children and even played with them, though he kept his distance from Monica. But there was an unsettling presence in the house, something Jason couldn't explain. Anubis's eyes were always on him, and sometimes, Jason could feel a strange weight in the room, as if the dog was waiting for something. It was as though Anubis knew something Jason didn't. Monica began to soften toward the dog, though she still didn't fully trust him. The children adored Anubis, but there was always an air of caution around him, a sense of unease that Jason couldn't shake. The neighbors started to notice, too. Every time they came over, Anubis would stand silently at the door, watching them with an intensity that made them uneasy. No one dared to get too close. One evening, after Jason had put the kids to bed, he decided to take Anubis for a walk. The moon was full, casting long shadows on the ground. Anubis walked beside him, his pace steady, his steps almost silent. Jason couldn't shake the feeling that the dog was leading him somewhere, though he wasn't sure where. As they walked deeper into the woods behind their house, Jason's unease grew. He glanced around, feeling the weight of the night pressing in on him. Anubis seemed unaffected, his golden eyes scanning the surroundings with a quiet intensity. Suddenly, the dog stopped, his head snapping up to the sky. Jason followed his gaze and froze. In the distance, he saw a light flickering, a soft, golden glow. It was faint, but it was there. Anubis tugged on the leash, pulling Jason forward, and despite every instinct telling him to turn back, Jason followed. They walked for what seemed like hours, the glow growing brighter as they approached. Finally, they reached a clearing, and in the center of the clearing stood a figure, a man dressed in tattered robes, holding an ornate staff. The man's eyes were just like Anubis's, golden and piercing. Jason's heart raced as the man stepped forward. "You've brought him back," the man said in a low, ancient voice. His words sent a chill down Jason's spine. "I've been waiting for this moment." Anubis stood still, his eyes locked on the man. Jason's mind was spinning. He didn't know what was happening, but he felt a pull toward the man, like he was drawn to him by some unseen force. The man held out his hand, and Anubis stepped forward, nuzzling against it. "The dog you have is no ordinary pet," the man continued. "His name is not just Anubis. He is Zolo, a sacred dog, a guide to the afterlife. He has been chosen to protect the souls of the departed, to escort them to their final resting place. You've unknowingly brought him back to us." Jason felt his heart stop. The truth of it hit him like a tidal wave. Anubis, the dog he had brought home, wasn't just any dog. He was a being of immense power, a creature tied to ancient rituals. And Jason had been a part of it all along. The man explained that Zolo, the sacred dog, had been stolen from his rightful place, and it was Jason's decision to keep him that had disrupted the balance. The world had been waiting for Zolo's return, and now, it was time for him to fulfill his role. Jason's world began to spin. He had no idea what to do. He couldn't just give up Anubis now. The dog had become a part of his life, a companion he had grown to love. But the man's words were undeniable. Anubis wasn't his to keep. Jason had unwittingly become part of something much larger than himself. With a heavy heart, Jason made the hardest decision of his life. He couldn't deny the truth. Anubis, Zolo, had a purpose far greater than he could ever have imagined. Jason had to let him go. He stood there, feeling the weight of his decision, as Anubis turned toward the man. Without a word, the dog walked toward his true master, and Jason knew that it was time to say goodbye. As the man and the dog disappeared into the night, Jason felt a sense of peace settle over him. It wasn't a feeling of loss, but of understanding. He had done the right thing. Anubis had fulfilled his role, and Jason had played a part in it, however unknowingly. Though the night was dark and quiet, Jason knew that he had made the right choice. And as he walked back to his family, he couldn't help but feel a sense of gratitude for the dog who had come into his life and left it again, just as mysteriously as he had arrived.